wanting to do it. Thank you. And secondly, to apologise, I won't be able to stay for the entirety of the meeting, but I wanted to say my thank yous before you started, and thank all of the parents who have joined the session this afternoon. I'm sure you'll find it very interesting. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Walter. Right. Okay, well, you should be able to see my screen. Perhaps you just give me a thumbs up if you can see that and you can hear me. Marvellous. Okay. Well, I've got it all recording, so like Mrs. Walter says, this will end up on the website as well. Okay, so like with our learning, we use questions to guide our students' learning. So this is what our coverage will be for this evening. You might look at that and think, oh gosh, inquiry-based learning, concept-based, what is that? All of that will be explained. So please, if this is new to you, that's perfect. This will help clarify and give you an insight into how we approach our learning at DBIS. Okay, so there are guiding questions. And just a little bit about what Discovery is then. It is a bespoke curriculum. We've created this. We've been on this journey now for the last 5 years when we made a transition from the IPC, which is the International Primary Curriculum. We're always critical of what we do and how well we deliver it, and we felt that the IPC wasn't meeting the needs of our students. Although it had lots of great elements, we didn't feel it had enough inquiry in it, and as we started approaching a new, more bespoke curriculum, we realised it was lacking something that was that conceptual layer. So it's always difficult in education, particularly at the moment when we're in these difficult times of what is that future? What future do our children, can they look forward to, and what professions will they go into? And all the researchers at the moment have shown that, you know, it's no longer a job for life. It's no longer one profession. And there's so many skills that get developed that aren't assessed or aren't examined, that are so crucial. And we often refer to these as 21st century skills, and I'll be talking about those later as well. So Discovery is taught from our early years to primary, and I'm currently working with the secondary on developing what they had with Discovery and trying to have greater alignment so that the transfer happens there as well. So it's concept-based and rooted in inquiry. Okay, so I'll explain those a little bit later. What we do use is the facts and the skills of each subject area that makes up Discovery. Often people think that when you have an inquiry approach to learning, oh, you don't need any facts, you don't need any knowledge, you don't need any skills. Well, that's far from the truth. So we use those and they underpin our units, but it is the subject concepts and the generalizations, as we call them. Now, these are conceptual understandings. The IB is a concept-based and inquiry-based curriculum. It's PYP, MYP, and diploma program, and it's careers program. They call conceptual understandings, big ideas, central ideas, enduring understandings. They're all different terms, but they all come back to the same idea. They are a big idea that transfers through learning and connects to the world. So our Discovery units are also underpinned by internationalism. We want internationally minded students that are aware of the world they're living in and connecting to through their learning. And of course, although we have learning technologies taught as a subject, it is embedded in everything that we do. We're very fortunate in years 3 to 6 to have one-to-one devices. That doesn't mean the children live on those devices, but it means we have them at our fingertips. And the world is at our fingertips these days. So we need to prepare our students for that. So those two areas of learning help underpin. Now, the other crucial element that, if you like, is interweaved with Discovery is English. Now, of course, we teach English as a subject. You know, English is made up of reading, writing, speaking and listening skills, so many aspects, again, broken down into those areas. But what Discovery does, it provides a context for that learning. So what it also ensures is that we have flow in our learning for the students, that what they're learning in English is through the discovery unit. And of course, research skills, reading skills, analysing text, all these things happen together. So when the students are learning through a discovery unit, they're using that context for their English, okay? So that makes learning very powerful. And as we say, we talk about this flow. So students' days can have prolonged periods of learning that is all connected, and the students then see the relationships between these subjects and they don't become compartmentalized, which is something we want to avoid. Let's come to what a concept is then. Okay, we've been on a journey, as I say, I've been on a huge journey of learning. I've been a teacher for many years now, and certainly changing role at DBIS into more curriculum development and innovation has been a fantastic journey for me. And I guess reviewing how you teach and being reflective, just like we want our students to, has made me such a better teacher and a leader in this area of curriculum development. And understanding how powerful conceptual learning can be has been a tremendous opportunity for me. So looking at the world through concepts makes you view it very differently. And they are essentially a way of organizing ideas, thinking in the world. And I have a lovely quote from Dr. Lynn Erickson, who is probably the world's guru on concept-based learning. I was very fortunate to be trained by her in concept-based curriculum instruction. And anybody that's looking to develop concept-based learning at their school would refer to her work. She's quite an incredible inspiration, been an educator for 40 odd years, a consultant for the International Baccalaureate, numerous publications, and it's her work that underpins her research, her work, her influence that underpins the journey that we've been on at DBIS. So a concept, it helps us organize our thinking, our ideas and our understanding in the world. And we've probably been doing it since we were infants. And sometimes people just don't realize what a concept is and how it helps organize. So we kind of use a bit of a checklist, and we use this with the children as well to understand concepts as well and when they're generalizing. So it has to be timeless. You cannot lock it in a period of time. It's universal, it will transcend, and most importantly, it will be abstract. It will be hard at times to pinpoint and really just give one definition of it, because of course concepts have multiple examples. Usually a noun, in fact always a noun, and it can be one or two words. And the examples are really where students can really help explain the connections and the relationships between them. So many, many examples will support that conceptual understanding. So again, this is worldwide used for students, teachers, when they're planning to help identify. Okay, while we're going through this list, I'd like you to perhaps think about that. Is this a concept? Okay, is it a concept, or is it just, let's say, another idea like a topic? Because as well as teaching conceptually, some schools, and we used to do this, was teach by topics. So think about this. Is this locked in time, or does it transcend time, place, experience? Has it got multiple examples? So have a think. Action, perspective, ancient Greece. Now, hopefully you've probably thought of the first two. Yep, they're concepts, absolutely. Without a doubt, perspective, that's a big, what we'd call a conceptual lens, actually. It transcends different subjects. But when we get to ancient Greece, well, no, because that's locked. One in a place, it's Greece, and then another one is it's locked in time. So if a student or a class were learning about ancient Greece and only ancient Greece, then that would become a topic about ancient Greece. And they could have a wonderful time learning about that. They would have a wonderful time learning about all the facts and the knowledge about ancient Greece, but it would all be locked. However, if we looked at ancient Greece as an example of a civilization, and we looked at the organization, the religious beliefs, the values, the hierarchy, the organization, the government, the impact that that had, then they start looking at something through a conceptual lens. And also, as we have in our Year 4 unit on civilizations, children might choose. There might be some children that choose to inquire into ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, or look at some other civilizations, the Incas. So therefore you get a broadness, and you get all these examples where students can then look at patterns and look at how civilizations all have common features. So hopefully that's given you some kind of idea into the difference between how a topic can be taught and how a conceptual unit of learning can be taught. Euros, again, it's locked. It's a currency in Europe, isn't it? It might be used in other places, but again, it's got an origin of, I'm trying to think how long it's been in, the 90s perhaps, but it's locked place. However, if we start looking at some mathematical terminology, that again, some people might refer to as vocabulary, we start realizing that maths is a conceptual language. So shape is a concept. I'm just going to jump to one after that. Money is a concept. Euros is an example of money. Okay, dollars, Hong Kong dollars, pounds. But money as a concept, again, will transcend time. Money has changed, you know, and again, if you looked at that through trade, exchange, value, then you're looking at that in a very different way, but you will explore the examples. If I come back to Romeo and Juliet, hopefully you might have spotted that's not a concept. It's locked in time. It's intertwined with Shakespeare. But if you looked at that through the example of romance, of even, I don't know, death, characterization, conflict, then you start using that as one example. And the understanding of it becomes much deeper on the part of the students. Civilizations, as I use it as an example, again, concept, conflict, mentioned that, very powerful concept. Relationships, again, these transcend through time, place, multiple examples. Now, this is an interesting one, American civil rights. Now, hopefully you've spotted, because it's American, it's locked in America. Remove American, and then civil rights becomes a concept. Okay, so hopefully starting to see some differences there. Process, so many examples of process, writing, reading process, long earth processes. Again, World War II, it's locked in a place and time. But again, using some of these concepts, if you looked at it through conflict, even relationships between people, relationships between countries, looking at it through perspective, then it becomes something more powerful. Cause and effect, notice there they go together, two words, very common concept. Sustainability, locked. But we have schools around the world, we have schools in the UK and around the world that will have these wonderful topics all about India, about Brazil.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Moriarty, but I think there's somebody trying to join the call, but they can only get in if you let them in, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay. Let me just see. I haven't had anything pop up on my window. Let me just see.
No, me neither.
Okay, I haven't got anything. Let's see. My friend's trying to join.
Yeah.
Oh, I see it, Chloe. Right. Chloe, has she clicked it? Has your friend clicked on the link in the email?
I have sent, I believe so. They were sent a link via a class WhatsApp group, but I've also just emailed them the link to the page on the hub. So I think they were going to try that next. Don't worry.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it should be. If you've got that link, anybody can then join it. If they're outside of the school, it doesn't matter, because that's the way the link has been designed. Oh, that's unfortunate.
No, don't worry. I'll ask them to keep trying, but honestly, don't worry. They maybe got a technical issue at their side.
Yeah, okay. I mean, obviously, like I say, it's been videoed, but not always the same, is it?
Well, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so let's move on a little bit further now. So we organise our units through something called a conceptual lens. So this transcends one discipline. Earlier, you might have seen discoveries made up of history, geography, science, art, design, technology, and then we use the context for our English. So we also have subject concepts that would be, let's say, very humanities-led, science-led. And of course, having these then develop deeper thinking. They develop high-order level thinking, and it's very much, discovery is one of those subjects whereby we have such rich discussion and debate, and often we find that some children just absolutely flourish in discovery because of the personal connection they've got, because of the fact that there's not always a right or wrong answer. It's about viewpoint, and it's about sharing learning and developing learning together and co-constructing understanding. So it's often a subject that, yeah, you get real surprises with when you see how some children can really just connect to it. So patterns, connections, huge part of understanding something conceptually, because you're looking at all these different examples to develop that learning. Now, I'm just going to flick through some different year groups here. So on the left there, we've got the unit of inquiry. Okay, then we've got the conceptual lens that's often called the macro. Okay, a macro lens. And then we've got the smaller concepts that help us dig deeper. Okay, so as you can see, depending on the unit, some units are more humanities-led, some are more scientific. If you look at the show unit in year 1, then there's a lot of creativity there and great alignment with English. Okay, so there's our year 1. That's how our year 1 looks. Year 2, okay, so you might notice that every year group starts with a learning to learn unit. This basically covers about the first 3 to 4 weeks of learning. Our week 1 was 2 days this year. So we all use that, and that sets up the culture of the classroom. It sets up the learning. And as you can see, a big drive within nearly every year group is on values, our school values, our own values, expectations. We define classroom contracts. This year it's been very exciting because we've got the new DBIS Learner Profile that's been a big element of this new unit of the learning to learn. And of course, every year these units get reviewed and improved and changed, because particularly with the learning to learn, we're very fortunate to have children moving through the school that are developing this approach to learning. Therefore, we can't just keep on doing the same thing every year. It needs reviewing because our children are in a different stage of learning from year to year. So there's what our year 3 units look like, our year 4 units, okay, our year 5 units, and our current year 6 units, okay. So again, you know, obviously these slides are being recorded, but there will also be a digital copy attached to the hub as well, so you can refer back to these. This is probably one of my favorite quotes of Lynn Erickson's, and it really sums up for me the power of teaching conceptually. Because often some people will view that concepts, oh, they're very tricky for young children, they're very hard. No, they're not. Young children at early years, nursery, reception, think conceptually and learn conceptually. They are natural inquirers. If you are using this language from an early age, then, as the quote says, we're not dumping things at a later stage. Never underestimate a child and the power of learning that they have, and never underestimate a nursery child, because often they will tell you how things are. So that's a brilliant quote. Now, CBCI is another term we use, and it's basically another term for concept-based learning, okay? So, as I said before, it's driven by the big ideas, okay? Has to have a real-world connection, has to have a real-world connection. If it doesn't, then where's the purpose, and where's the, I guess, the questions that the children drive and want to find out? Critical thinking, huge element of this. It's part of our learner profile. It's part of our inquiry learning skills. And we talk a lot about 21st century and what companies need from our students now for the future. Being a problem solver, being a collaborator, being a creative and critical thinker, huge elements. Being a great self-manager. These are the areas that underpin our approaches to learning. So they're so important. And a concept-based curriculum and approach to learning will ensure this can happen. We always realize that our students have a starting point. They're never empty vessels. So you've always got something to connect the learning to and build from that. Another aspect that we're really focusing on at the moment is providing opportunities for student action. In year 6, for example, we have all these leadership opportunities, but really transferring what they learn into a real context and something that can make a difference. That's a really powerful element of any unit. So we're really working on that. We've got Mr. Haynes this year, who's leading on experiential learning and outdoor learning. And again, as always, we're reviewing the units to make them more rigorous and more applicable to the world. This is another unit overview. This just breaks down again all the year groups from years 1 to 6 and the units where they're planned, because it's very useful for parents to see where units are taking place. This is also in the curriculum document that can be found on the website. It breaks down each unit. This will also be on the hub now following tonight's meeting. And it's a great one for just referring to. Now, I know we're not all traveling much at the moment, but we live in a fantastic place. So there's so many connections you can make to the real world through this unit. Now, to make this easier for you as well, every unit has a description. Now, this is written for the children. So it's like a little trigger. It's a little provocation to get them excited about the unit. This is also found in the curriculum document for the school. So what it helps you to do as parents is to get a little bit of an insight into the unit and maybe again think, oh, how can I ask a few questions of my child that go a little bit deeper than how was school today? Now, oh, I hear you learning about our world and our community. Or what do you understand about community then? What is a community? Now, just by asking a question like that, you're already making it conceptual because you're using the word community and that's a concept. And then they might talk about DB, and then you might extend it further by saying, well, what other communities have we got? What other communities have we lived in? Always bringing it back to personal examples helps deepen a student's understanding of their learning. So there's the year 1 and 2, and I'll just flick through these again. So again, this just gives you a great insight into the nature of the unit, the depth, the direction. Is it more humanities-led? Is it more science-led? And throughout the year and each year group, there's a balance of these. So even though a unit might be humanities-led, there will still be science more likely in it. We use the national curriculum from England to underpin our science content and skills as well. So every year group has its coverage of the science, but they're interweaved through the unit so that it's got a context and a purpose. And again, science is another focus we've got this year to make our students more scientifically curious, better inquirers, better question askers, and make them really prepared for secondary as well. So those units there break down the descriptions. So I talked about at the beginning, facts and skills are so important. We can't forget about them, but when we plan units, it's a backward design. So we go from the end to the other way. It might sound a bit odd, but what it does is it means that we're not driven by the content. We have great collaborative planning meetings in teams. I've worked with every team across the school from year 1 to year 6. I've also worked with nursery and reception where we're going to be reviewing their units. And we've built these units from basically ideas and where we want the students to learn. We had a gap, for example, in local history. So when we were working with the year 5 team, we created a unit about our Hong Kong. We've reviewed that a couple of times, and obviously things in it, things previously have been quite sensitive. So we changed the lens. We looked at it through change. We looked at how buildings have changed. We looked at how the geography of Hong Kong has changed with land reclamation. And it just became a fantastically interesting unit. And for example, last year when we were online learning, when year 5 were doing it, with my own daughter at home learning through that unit, it was fantastic seeing how the year 5 teaching team had really developed the bones and the plan which I'd worked with to see how exciting that unit had become. And, you know, I love history, and that unit really provided for me such depth to understanding Hong Kong as well. And I've lived here 10 years. So it was a really exciting unit to see my daughter learn through as well. So the facts and the skills, if you like, are the foundations. They help provide examples. They're very important, but what the concepts do is it draws on those. And then the concepts and the understandings help the students use these examples to help retain information and use them as examples to teach others with and to learn, and hopefully then transfer at a later stage, perhaps in secondary, or, you know, even later at university, to draw back on that learning and not just forget them, but also not just having this facts being regurgitated without a context. So knowledge, skills, understandings, crucial to concept-based learning and inquiry. So if I just give you some examples now, these are some examples from some planners that we do. We work quite old school with big sheets of paper, and then obviously we transfer that to a digital. So if you look here, this is from our national curriculum in England, and we've made tweaks for our international setting and our cohort. So on this side, this is what we want the students to know, their knowledge. And over here, what we want them to be able to do, their skills. So as you can see, this unit is from Can We Save the World? There's geography and history. There'll be other strands lower on science. This is one taken from year 1. So again, you can see the scientific content, which is about everyday materials, and then the inquiry science skills of actually carrying out an investigation. And that leads us to generalizations. So it's a word we use with the children all the way down to year 1. As I said, we considered things like big ideas, but we stuck with this. And actually, it's very interesting that in the IB now, in the middle years program and the diploma program, generalizing and generalization has now become a concept. And students are expected to generalize. Generalizing involves deep understanding, high order level thinking, critical thinking skills, and clear articulation of understanding. It's a very high level, and we are doing this all the time. And children get better and better at it, and then the depth comes when they can use these generalizations supported with examples. So let's just go a bit deeper with what a generalization is. It's basically it's a sentence, it's a statement of relationship, and it must have 2 or more concepts in it, and it will use a strong verb. So we have some rules and scaffolding to help the students. It must transfer across time, place, cultures, all of those, because it's conceptual. Here's some more examples, some planning. So on the left there are generalizations that we've created. So when I work with teams, we brainstorm everything there is about these units. So this one was about times are changing. And with help, I help the team construct the generalization, and then we use guiding questions, because questions, as soon as a student uses a question or sees a question, they are thinking. So a curriculum like this is no longer objective-led, it's question-led, okay? Because it makes them think. And what we have are factual questions, conceptual questions, and debatable questions. Some cover more than one area. So these generalizations, what we call target generalizations, we do not share these with the students. When we first went on this journey, we used to have one generalization, one conceptual understanding for a whole unit. And after working with Lynn Erickson, she's critical of the fact that one isn't enough. So we have a minimum of 5 in a unit. And the other big difference is, since we reviewed our planning and changed this format, is that we don't share them. And Lynn Erickson's view is that it's like giving a child a present, but before they can open it, you tell them what's in it. So instead, we build to this understanding, and the students co-construct this through their ability to generalize based on the learning that has gone through the questions. Okay, so these are here for us as teachers. Sometimes they're curious. What did you come up with, Mr. Marty? What's your generalization? And it's amazing that many of the children will often come up with better ones. Just like when we talk about students, never underestimate them. They've got great creativity and imagination. So if we look at this one here, which is from year 2, people within a community may have different perspectives on changes. So that's the big idea. It's got to make sense. It's got to transfer. So we use that checklist. Notice this one has a qualifier, may have. because not all people will. They will have different perspectives. If it's a humanities generalization, it will often have a qualifier. Okay, so we would be looking at students creating this. In year 2, they might do this in small groups. In year 1, they were doing ones as small groups and class-led. Again, they might happen orally, and the teacher might be the scribe. Moving up the school, again, depending on the level of scaffolding, students would be moving to creating their own. It all depends on the situation, okay, and the students. Here's a mapping one for our learning to learn. So you'll start seeing that there is some complexity of generalizations building, because as the students move through the school, you've got to bear in mind the age of the students and the ability of the students. There's no point having a wonderful generalization that you know that these students are never going to really reach or understand. But through the learning, through the connection to individual concepts, then they start building connections, okay? So I'll be showing you some examples towards the end of this presentation of some examples from concept walls in classrooms, all the way from year 1 upwards. Our show units, we're very fortunate, hoping, fingers crossed, that shows come back this year. Year 1, 3 and 5 alternate shows have, year groups have shows. What we did a few years ago now was, when I was in year 3, Mrs. Walter was very supportive of this. We took the show from the hands of parents making wonderful props and stages, to us not buying a script, to putting it all in the hands of the students. And we created our first year 3 show. I'm trying to think how many years ago, 5 years ago now, where there was no script. The children came up with everything. In fact, there was no spoken word till the final scene, where we used this amazing poem, this spoken word poem. And since then, we've just gone from strength to strength. So the idea being that any show can be driven by anything. These are the concepts that are driving it. So it's not a show about, let me think. It's not a show about saving the world. It could be about any unit. It doesn't even have to be a discovery unit driving it. It can be literally anything, because these ideas will transcend any performance. And if you look, there's variety in our conceptual lens and the generalizations, and they're progressively more challenging. Okay. So let's have a look at inquiry-based learning. Sometimes spelt well, across the world spelt with an I. We have got British features, so we use the E, but bear in mind it's the same. So it's very much centered around the students. They are the center of this. They have great agency over what they'll be learning, and again, coming up with the questions, or coming up with the questions with the teachers, or us posing them, that helps them connect to their big idea. And the idea is that we as teachers step back. We facilitate, we question, we support, we scaffold, but we don't spoon feed. Now, at times, we might have to hit pause and do some explicit teaching. You know, it's like when children collaborate, you can't just throw them into this. They've got to develop over each year, and you've got to model what good collaboration looks like. Well, the same happens with research and questioning skills. So it's not just throw them in there and hope, fingers crossed, that they get on with it. No, that you know what groups need help, you know what individuals might need help, and you know where you can let certain children fly with it. Obviously, the process here, we've got different inquiry processes, we've got different research processes, and some work better for certain children. But essentially, they're going to question, they're going to investigate, they're going to research, they're going to find out, they're going to decide what they're doing with this information, they're going to reflect, make it better, and always have it connecting to the real world. Something purposeful, and having some action from it, that's amazing if that happens. And then when you do this, it's transferable. And when we say it's transferable to other disciplines, other areas, other year groups as they grow and progress through the school. Even if they were to transfer to other schools, this would be an incredible set of skills to have. And of course, even going on to university and having independent dissertations, or like the extended essay and diploma program with the IB, these all work. So it doesn't matter where you'd go to school after DBIS, whether you stay at DBIS, these are going to be incredible tools. And they're just summing up: investigation, curiosity, wonder. These are all parts of inquiry. Now, there's different types of inquiry. In concept-based, it's found that the research shows that structured and guided are the best forms. However, you do want to give agency and ownership, but jumping straight into something like open inquiry when students aren't prepared for that could be very challenging and could be quite demotivational for some students. So it's structured, as you can see. We're deciding the questions. We use this, but we blend it with guided. And from it, they will draw their own understandings. And we are, as I said, we're guiding them with the questions we ask. But in every lesson, students are coming up with other questions. Students have opportunities for their own mini inquiries and extended inquiries. And through that, then, they will develop their own findings, understanding, and we as teachers will help facilitate that. So that's an example. There's an explanation of those two forms of inquiry. Again, coming back, this is a current unit we're looking at the moment. I'm teaching this in year 6. And we've been using these guiding questions to develop our understanding of migration. It's a very big unit. It's one that has to be managed very carefully with what's happening in the world. It's very real. All the students can connect to it through their own migration. I've got children that are local Hong Kong children who think, no, I've always lived in Hong Kong. My parents have always lived here. And every year it's like, go home and have a chat. Go and do a bit of research at home with your parents. And then the next day, every time they've come back, oh, I never knew this. My great-grandparents came down from Guangzhou, or we've got one at the moment from Fujian. And now she's all interested about her family history. So again, making that personal connection just engages our students in their learning. And then we go quite deep, all right? As we progress and we find where they're at, we will then move on to our second generalization, which is what we're doing at the end of this week and next week. Now, to help the students understand this, we call them our inquiry learning skills. And they're often labeled 21st century skills. The IB has similar. They call them approaches to learning. And they travel, for example, in the IB, they go from early years through to diploma. Lots of schools will call them 5 Cs. They might have 6 Cs. There's so many variations. We find these work for us. We have them child-centered. And what we do is they help guide our learning. Okay, so very, very important. And what we created was we have learning ladders for these. So if you look down here, standard 1 through to 6, moving these into secondary with discovery 2. And they are I can statements, and some of them are quite aspirational. So sometimes, even though you're in year 6, you might be using elements of year 5 here, and they help guide our learning. So for example, we use Google Suite, Google Apps for Education, which has been an absolute lifesaver while we've been online learning. And we use something called split screen here. So this is where we might have a teaching slide, and on the left, it's what we're learning about, so the content of the lesson. And it might be using some inquiry strategies, like using some graphic organizers and some research. And then on this side, it's a focus on the skills. So it might be, right, I'm really going to observe today how you guys are collaborating. Might be only focused on one group that day, or a teacher might, or you might be looking across the room, making observations, recording bits on Post-it notes, congratulating students for doing so well there, asking others in the team to join in. And they now feed, they used to feed our personal goals, but now we've got our wonderful new learner profile, which has been launched this term. So there are 8 aspects to it, and this went through a big period of consultation, a very big team of teachers across the 3 phases. And as you can imagine, there was lots of debate, lots of consultation across the school with the language. We went to parent communities, and we feel very proud of what we've got here. And of course, the learner skills drive these. You can see already that there's so much connection between them. So again, now in our classroom, they help our behaviors. So the other inquiry skills help drive the learning. And this year, what we're going to see if we can get as much of this into the behaviors, into how students act and behave. Okay, so confident communicators, balanced individuals, committed learners, creative thinkers, effective collaborators, mindful leaders, problem solvers, responsible citizens. And we have our reward system in primary linked to class dojos. So these become house dojos. So the house system is already underway in terms of rewards. But what it does is it helps the teacher recognize what they're looking for, but also the students then realize why they're getting the reward. And it might be, gosh, do you know, today you have been an amazing creative thinker in that lesson. I have loved the way that you've come up with those questions there and the creativity you've shown. Have a house dojo, and the children self-manage that and they add it to their list. These house dojos get collected weekly. We've just announced today our house captains from year 6. So we will be announcing our first set of house points in next Friday's assembly. It might be in maths. These transcend all disciplines. In maths, it might be, again, students being rewarded for incredible problem solving, or maybe having a great commitment to their learning and showing brilliant resilience when something's been tricky. So everything feeds this. Now, I've talked a lot about concept-based curriculum, and I just want to make a comparison to what are traditional curriculums. Now, as I said, the IB is concept-based. It's inquiry-based. We have not been an IB school, and we have greater flexibility with what we're doing. As I said, we feel we have greater depth to our units by having 5 generalizations, big ideas. An IB PYP unit would have 1, as our existing units did. But prior to that, when we had the IPC would have been considered a 2D curriculum. And a 2D curriculum is one that doesn't have the conceptual level, and it makes an assumption, but it doesn't teach to that understanding. But research has shown that particularly in those subjects that are driven by concepts, maths is an entirely conceptual language, as is science, that unless students are learning from an early age about these concepts and learning what examples and non-examples there are, then by the time they get to high school and possibly even university, they've got big misconceptions. So this is why we are starting young, and you need to start young. So I've said young children think conceptually. So this model comes from Lynn Erickson. Again, a very famous graphic this is in the world of education. So on there, it shows the 2D model. Now, I'd like to just clarify that any curriculum can be turned into a 3D curriculum conceptually. Okay, some curriculums are designed with concepts in them. You've got aspects of Australian, Kiwi national curriculums. Funnily enough, the new Welsh curriculum from Wales, that tiny little principality next to England, has done an incredible job creating a new national curriculum separate from England. And it's inquiry based and it's concept driven. You've got whole areas in Canada, Alberta, that has rewritten their national curriculum to make it concept and inquiry based. But as we've done with our national curriculum from England, we have added that layer of concepts to it. So any curriculum can be made conceptual. It's about the design, the planning, and the professional development for teachers so that they can understand the value of it. So just a little bit now looking at how discovery is taught. As we said, it's underpinned by inquiry learning. They will explore examples of the concepts, the generalization, world connection, authentic, and of course that key high-level thinking and critical thinking are so important. Another amazing thinker in the world of education, Ron Richart, we use the visible thinking routines that he has developed at Harvard School of Education with his Project Zero, and they're incredible for developing these high order thinking skills, and they help underpin the language of learning that we use at DBIS. And again, they help organize, they help create that collaboration and critical thinking that we so need, and of course making those connections. So as you saw from the planners, there's elements of the planners I showed earlier. We have guiding questions. Questions guide everything. This is why they're so important. As I mentioned, we use structured and guided inquiry to get our students thinking and collaborating, researching. And of course, as I said before, we use the content, the facts and topics to help provide the examples. And of course, what we want is them to be transferable. So there's another example from year 5. There's 3 of the generalizations. We've got 5, as I said, in that unit, but the questions on the side help the teachers plan the learning engagements for the students. As I said, we use split screen, so there's another example of that, using inquiry strategy of is not. We could tell the children what migration means. Easy. I could say to them, go and open up a new tab on your computer, find out what migration is. But instead, we get them to what's called inductively build this. By giving them examples and non-examples, it then requires them to sort. It requires them to collaborate. It requires them to think and to do the heavy load, the cognitive load. We don't want to do it as teachers. We want to observe and facilitate, maybe ask some questions. Oh, I love the way you've done this. That's an interesting one in that column. Tell me, why did you put that in there? And then get the children to explain and question them and get that depth of understanding so they understand why they've put that there. Okay? And as you can see there, one of the thinking skills is to give evidence to explain the thinking. Okay, so that's another example. Now, our learning walls, they are concept driven. They are very, they have to be up to date. They have to be reactive. A lot of the walls might be empty as the unit starts building, and that's the excitement. And they become a teaching resource. They become somewhere where the children can go back to. Very, very important, very much student-led, post-it notes, notes that are added, examples from organised that they might have used on Google Classroom. As you see there, research cycle, lots of skills teaching as well. You know your children, and if they need a skills taught, it's almost like hitting a pause and just saying, right, you know what, we're going to hit pause there. Let's just focus on some questioning skills now. And that's where a good concept-based teacher, which we nurture at DBIS, has that ability to do and recognise, right, my kids need some support here. Some examples of generalising. Again, we'll use digital tools so that students can read each other's, give feedback. Some more examples there. Now, of course, we need to be aware of how students are doing it in the subjects that make up discovery. So we use a lot of different strategies. Probably one of the most important is what we call formative and summative. So formative are always ongoing. They could be quick exit slips at the end. But all of these help us make judgments about their understanding. A summative might be towards the end of a unit, which culminates in skills being shown that are most significant, the understandings. Here's a quick one for the end of a lesson. Exit slips, again, it uses a thinking routine from Project Zero from Harvard. I used to think, but now I know this is a really powerful one. We used this recently in year 6 for their understanding migration. So I had ones like, I used to think migrating was going on holiday, but now I know migration means to move to a new place for a longer period of time. I then know, right, brilliant, they've got a great understanding of that concept of migration. This could be done on a post-it, could be done on a Google form. And then I can see, those children there or that person, I just need to have a little chat with. Let's review the learning and see whether I can make sure that that group then understands what the concept means. So later they can show relationships between all of the concepts within that generalization. Again, a sorting activity, really powerful. This again showed me what students were able to understand what push and pull means. And in some cases, just need another little conversation or a little prompting. Why did you put this one there? Can you tell me why? Again, reflections. In year 6, we've started, well, we last year conceptualized our English curriculum. So we're working on developing that again this year, reviewing it, making sure new teaching staff have ownership of it. Again, having a skill of summarizing, such a powerful skill that is, putting it in a context, right? I've got a friend here, explain to them what you've learned today about migration. It's so important that when I talked about teachers at DBIS, that they know their students and that they're not spoon feeding and handing them to the learning to them, but getting them to inquire, getting them to co-construct, use the evidence. And these are skills that we develop, but it can take time. So we all know, right, we could give someone a quick quiz. Right, there's the facts. Brilliant, you know the facts, but what are you going to do with them? That's the tricky bit. The deep learning happens when you can use the facts and you can make learning transfer to other contexts. So this is where creating generalizations comes in, and it's a big part of the learning, and it really helps us show those students that can use examples to think deeply and make, I guess, powerful connections with their learning. Here's some examples here. This is from our first Learning to Learn unit. So We had documents where they put them into, they have their own personal documents so they can see their own journey as well. But as you can see, there's the concepts there, and the students create their own generalizations. They reflect on them, they want to make sure they make sense. We want them to be strong, so we're scaffolding them not to use weak verbs, not to use pronouns in there. You might speak more generally like people, because sometimes students write, I have an understanding. Do you know what you've done there? And often the child, yeah, I'm saying I've locked it to just myself, haven't I? It's like, yeah. Okay, so I need to get rid of the pronoun I and be more general. And that's essentially what a generalization is. It will transfer through place and time. It's wordsmithing. It's powerful language skills here. But the deepness then comes of how they use examples to support this. Here's someone's example of their own document where they keep the record of them. And it's amazing to see from the start to the end. But of course, the beauty now is that students coming through the school are just getting better and better at this, because they've been exposed to this learning now for the last 2 years, and even longer when we look at what we did with our units before that. Here's some ones from year 1. Again, you know, some fantastic opportunities. Makes sense. Obviously, we won't be as strict with some of the rules of writing equality or deep generalization. But again, this would have been co-constructed with a group of children. The teacher acted as a scribe. Okay. And it's at their level. A generalization has to be at their level. They have to understand it. So for a year 1 student, the language choices are theirs. But they would understand the concepts of choice, consequence. They will have done some concept formation work about choices. What choices do you make? What are the consequences of some of your choices? And again, this would have been linked to them personally, but then the idea is that they can transfer that through other examples. So they might look at, oh, going to bed on time means that I won't wake up grumpy in the morning, or I'm going to wake up energized. Having a lunch that has a good balance of different food types in it means I'm making a healthy choice. So it's amazing how then they make greater transferal of this. And of course, maybe when they're older in year 3 or year 4, when we've got a body and mind unit, they will hopefully make connections through the prior learning. Here's some more in year 1 here. Again, some fantastic learning going on there. Here's another one which has some examples around it to support their understanding. So this one came from a year 6 unit on ecosystems. Oh no, beg your pardon. Yes, population of the area. Yes, it was ecosystem. Just looking there, because we look at location in migration. Concepts get revisited. I'll leave you just to read this one for a minute. This one blew me away. Absolutely blew me away. This was an end of unit. It was part of our celebration of learning. All the concepts there were used from the whole unit. And if I shared with you that, you know, this wasn't one of our most talented writers. We're very fortunate to be a very inclusive school. We have a wide range of abilities. And as I said, sometimes in discoveries, students just do an amazing job pulling everything together. And this was one of the most powerful pieces of writing I saw from that unit. Incredible. And they just showed such amazing understanding. Sometimes you just get blown away by what the students can produce. So that was a lovely example. I can remember very clearly reading that and just, wow, you've got it. At the moment, we're very much looking at concept mapping and developing students and scaffolding there. This is actually one from English in year 6 that happened last week. We had a leadership unit that was leading to house captains and other leadership roles. So we helped the students understand the concepts by looking at the relationship between them, and what they then did was describe the relationship between them, and then that helped them generalize. So you can see the concepts there. And feedback from the students are that, wow, this really helped me understand the concepts, bring them together, and then of course the learning and the understanding is much deeper. Using Seesaw is a fantastic tool. I'm sure you're all connected to your children's learning portfolios. It follows them through the primary school. Giving them feedback there has been so valuable during the closure period, but also in the classroom. And it's just an amazing tool. I look back on using Seesaw, and it's like Google Classroom. I wonder, I don't think I could go back to not using them. When you get these amazing digital tools, you just want to keep them forever. And they just add a completely other layer. And as a parent too of 2 children in year 2 and 6, I love seeing the learning. It gives that amazing insight into the classroom that you can't always get. And of course, even from our point of view, when they post videos and they do collaborative work, you can't be with every group at the same time. So it's like a moment from time that otherwise you might have lost or missed. And sometimes you see children just produce incredible things that maybe just wouldn't have happened in a normal classroom that maybe isn't taking this approach. Yeah, some other examples. Again, notice how they tag them to the skills and also to the units. This one was a video again. I would have lost so much valuable formative assessment there if they hadn't have videoed what they had organised there with their thinking and their feedback. So incredible tool. Every unit, they're all formative tools that we use to just check in constantly with the students. But one of the biggest aspects is an end of unit assessment. So we call this a culminating assessment. It's the most significant knowledge, most significant skills, and the most important conceptual understandings. So these are all built into the unit. This is one from year 6. We have this wonderful event up in the Globe. This year we're going to have to come up with a plan B, just in case of social distancing. You can see here the most significant skills as part of the content, the process, the conceptual. This is a guide for the students. So every year group has something similar. And then we look at students who have achieved this at their level, or might even be, you know, we want to challenge those into mastering. It sets up a real scenario, it linked to our English, and this is what all units now have moved to, and of course the English provides the context. So I'm going to wrap up with things you can do. Interact with the Seesaw. Absolutely. I mean, my daughter has stopped me adding comments now. She said, stop being a teacher, Daddy. So I just love heart things now, but I love looking at them. But it provides an opportunity for a conversation. If you want to make comments or add questions, that's great. I would recommend it. You know your child. Obviously, you don't want to embarrass them, but I've seen some incredible communication between parents and children, and it's just lovely to witness. Ask them about their unit, link it in with their English, whatever. Instead of saying, how was your day? What great questions did you ask today? What struggles did you have? Yeah, they might still not want to tell you about it. Kids hate talking about their day, you know, but if you want to go a bit deeper over the dining table and you say, oh, I've been looking at your Seesaw and I saw this wonderful piece of work. It's amazing how animated students can be. You've got this incredible insight. Use it, connect to it. If you're out and about, look at it, you know, use the nature that we've got around us, make connections to examples. They're everywhere. Okay, so that makes you, I guess, connected to your daughter, son's education, and then that world around you. Use what we've got. Obviously, the holidays thing, let's hope they come back soon. But listen, a holiday can be, you know, a weekend away, a staycation. Amazing what's there. Okay, so remember that learning happens everywhere. Absolutely, and sometimes it's the last place you might expect something to happen. So, thank you very much for your time. I do hope this has given you an insight into discovery. I don't think we've got any questions, have we? No. But if you do have a question, please feel free to unmute and ask, and I will do my very best to answer. Otherwise, this video will be posted up on the Hub. It'll also be shared with an email link. Copy of the slides will be shared there. And also the most recent overviews for the units will be there, the unit description, so that you can see what your child is learning about. Okay, so floor's open if anybody wants to ask any questions. No, I take that as good. Hopefully I've covered it. Or thank you, thumbs up. Thank you very much over in the corner there, Vanessa. Thank you. Appreciated. Otherwise, you're very welcome to leave and enjoy your evening. Like I said, if you do have any questions, please, ask away or email at any time. Things might arise later. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome. Thank you, Chloe. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Nice
Thank you
evening.
for joining. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.